You know, there's something amazing about this church, and one of those things that I have never figured out, and that is your rummage sale. I have never figured that out. And part of it is that I've never figured out how somebody can just look at something and see a piece of junk and decide that it's time that they get rid of it. And so they clean their house of all their junk, and they bring it here, and then there are other people then that are searching around all these pieces of junk and all this stuff that's there, and they suddenly find something they've been looking for all of their life. It has become their treasure. It's like what they say, one man's junk is another man's treasure. It's just hard for me to imagine that somebody walking out of this, I won't name with this year, Janet, she really thought that she had stole something from the Methodist Church. She paid a quarter for this, and she walked away, smiling away, thinking that she got away with bank robbery. And it was wrapped for me for my birthday. I love it. Anything that Janet gives me, I love, and there is something special about mountain goats. Maybe it's the beard, I think, that has something to do. But I've never figured that out, that how somebody could look at something and see that you know, my house is too cluttered, it's just been hanging around too long, it's out old-fashioned or whatever, and they bring it here and we put it out for sale, and somebody thinks that they have robbed us because they can buy it for a quarter. But what amazing things our rummage sale does, our rummage sale. It came up a couple of times this week during conversation, and one of them was I was walking in with a woman who said, "We are done having kids. We are done having kids. When is your rummage sale? Because we want to get rid of the crib. We want to get rid of everything." So she was saying that. But also it came up in our task force that looking at the budget, and as they looked at the budget, they realized if we had a rummage sale every month, we wouldn't have anything to worry about. That's what everybody else said in the meeting. But that's just to say that it does incredible things in the amount of effort it does. And if it hadn't been for the rummage sale, our parking lot would not have been done. And after visiting with people, it appears that was the best thing we did last year. Matt, I'm sorry, both you and I worked hard, but it was the parking lot that was the best thing that did, because it was the money from the rummage sale that helped make that happen. And really, Matt and I were concerned because we kept losing members, and we haven't once the parking lot was finally fixed. They stopped dropping in the potholes and disappearing. So, but you know, Satan had a garage sale. Now, how many of you are garage sailors? Yeah. They fascinate me as well. But Satan was having a garage sale, and he got tables out in front of his garage, and he was putting out these old tools that he was using, like lying and cheating and fibbing and stealing and just laying them out and hoping that somebody would buy them because they're kind of worn out tools and such. And so people were coming and they were perusing through his stuff and looking at them. But lo and behold, there was a man that stopped by there, and we've done garage sales, but it always happens. Somebody starts walking into your garage deep and deep, and even though you've got sheets and stuff covering all of this stuff, they see something on the top shelf, and they pull it down, and they say, "How much will you take for this?" You know, and we'll say, "Oh, it's not for sale. It's not for sale." And they'll say something like, "Well, anything. It's worth something." And so this man, while Satan was working with these people that come to look at his garage sale, snuck into his garage, and he saw way up on a top shelf this shiny tool. And so he reached on his tiptoes and got it, and he brought it to Satan and said, "Satan, what will you take for this? What will you take for this?" And Satan goes, "That's not for sale. That is not for sale. I know you got that out of my garage. That is not for sale." But the man says, you know, anything has its price. Everything has its price. What would you take for this? And Satan goes, "No, that's my prized tool. I use that, and it's the best tool I have." And finally the man says, "What is it?" And Satan goes, "It's discouragement. It's discouragement." If you think about it, discouraging is one of the most painful things that we endure as human beings. Just being discouraged about life or something happening or things not going right, getting a phone call from the doctor's office and hearing that we've been diagnosed with something and getting those discouraging words can set us back. It's like a rug being pulled out from underneath us and we have nothing to hold on to. Discouragement is painful. It is a struggle. You know, for some people, when they are discouraged with life, it's almost like there's a black cloud over their heads, and they are discouraged to the point that not even the bright, sunniest days like we have had in these last couple of days in January do not even lift their spirits. They have trouble putting one foot in front of the other. In fact, some of them are so discouraged they don't want to even get out of bed. Discouragement is so painful. It's hard. It is very, very hard. In ministry, oftentimes when people are coming to visit, it's often something that has discouraged them. Something has not gone right in life. Their life it just seems like everything they touch falls apart and everything they try to do is wrong. So they come in to visit and just to talk. Now, these are things that have not happened, I don't want to say, but they are commonly happening in a pastor's study. I can think back to a woman in 2008 who had a very nice job with the DOT, and when I was serving in Nevada, and she was let go of her job. It was a job that offered her a pension as well as insurance. And she struggled because it was hard to find work then. The market had fallen, things had gotten short, and there were just not enough jobs. And so she had to start waiting tables in order to try to make ends meet. And she would lie in bed crying herself to sleep every night, thinking back the times when she had a job when there was less to worry about, of just even putting food on the table. A man comes in my office, and they were this couple that always sat together. And he says, we've been married for 20 years. 20 years we've been married, and I thought things were fine. And I came home this week to find that my wife is gone and a note on the kitchen table. I've decided I don't want to be married to you anymore. Hearing those words, he just couldn't wrap his head around it, and he couldn't figure out what went wrong, and he himself could not sleep at night because he could not figure out. But he was so discouraged. So discouraged. My previous parish I mentored weekly at the school. Went and had lunch on Wednesdays and sat down and with the kids and just had an opportunity, especially for those who came from single parents or things were struggling with school and just got acquainted. And one day I got there and there was one girl who was sitting all by herself. So I decided I'll just go take my tray and sit in front of her. She had her head down in her tray. I had to say, "Excuse me, I don't think we've met." And when she looked up, she had tears in her eyes. I said, "I'm Steve Williams, and what's yours?" Her name was Deborah, and I said, "Deborah, what's the matter?" And she went to tell me her story. Her father got a promotion. It meant that she was moving somewhere, and she talked about how much she loved her neighborhood and how much she loved her school, and that she had only been there a week and she had not made a friend. They made fun of her accent because they had moved from the South. And so she sat there by herself, alone, not wanting anybody to know that she was crying. She was discouraged. Disappointment. Disappointment is a struggle that brings pain to our lives as we struggle. And I know that all of us have experienced in our own lives. We've been let down. I know time and time again I prefer the best chili in the whole wide world, and it just never wins. But I've also discovered that as I look at some of you, there are things that are more important than chili, and there's more important things than who's in the Super Bowl and who wins, and if the Cyclones, they looked terrible yesterday. Those are just games, and it's just part of life, but there are things out there that I know you are dealing with that has discouraged you to the point that you just don't know where to go. There's some people think a change of scenery is something that would bring some new life to them. I need to get out of this place and go away, and they go to places like Florida where there's sun and such, but to be honest, there's no way of escaping disappointment and sadness. A guy had a heart attack, and they rushed him to the hospital, and they decided they needed to do immediate surgery. And while they were doing surgery, he had one of those out-of-body experiences where while he was in surgery, his everything collapsed, and all the lines went flatline, and he found himself in heaven. He saw God, and God said, "Well, I'm not done with you yet. You still got 30 years to live." And the next thing he remembers is waking up in a hospital bed. He's looking, and he's alive, and realized that God has given him a new lease on life. It's 30 years to live, and he said, I looked in the mirror and said, I've got this new life. I'm going to change things. So he decided, I don't like the way I look, so while he was in the hospital, decided he would arrange a facelift. He'd get some hair plants to take care of his bald head. He would also have liposuction and tummy tuck to take care of this. And he did all these things. In fact, he even had a hairdresser come in and change the color of his brand new hair. He felt like a new man with a new lease on life. Finally, the day he gets released from the hospital, he steps out and he goes, "Today is the first day of the rest of my life," and then walks into a speeding ambulance and gets killed. Gets up to heaven and said, "God, I thought you gave me 30 years. And God said, "Well, I'm sorry, I just didn't recognize you." Even a change, we can't run away from disappointment, from discouragement. It's always there. And it's a struggle through life. It's a struggle in life. What I find amazing in my years of ministry is that there are some people who are able to go through most disappointing and discouraging and challenging times in their life, and they see it as a doorway to new opportunity. And then there are other people who just one little thing sets them off, and they feel like it's the end of the world. I think when I'm retiring, I'm going to try to figure out what is the key that helps people, in the sense, overcome their discouragement and disappointment. Is it faith, or is it their genes, or is it their background, their childhood, their family? What is it that helps them overcome the disappointment in their lives? It's almost like, instead of a treasure and a piece of junk, they are able to take a tragedy and make it an opportunity. What is it that makes people be able to overcome those times that we feel that, how do they get over it? How do they get through it? Well, our Bible is full of words of encouragement. It's a sad thing that we don't read it often enough. But I just wanted to share with you today words that I found that have been helpful and encouraging to me in the book of Isaiah. Words that I've turned to time and time again when it just seems like everything I touch falls to pieces and everything I do just is wrong. But of anyone in the Bible, it would be Isaiah who would understand what it means to be discouraged, distraught, and disappointed. See, Isaiah was called at a time when actually Isaiah witnessed what he knew what was happening. Babylon was standing at the border of Israel and threatening to come in, and so he warned the people of Israel that we needed to be prepared for this. And he watched as the Babylonians came in and literally obliterated Israel. It's amazing that we have a country anymore, and there are Hebrew people anywhere around the world, because Babylon had literally obliterated. Isaiah watched as they tore down Jerusalem and saw them tear down the temple stone by stone, not leaving one unturned. There were many who were slaughtered and killed, and those who remained were slaves. And it was a time of discouragement for a nation. A time of discouragement, and God called Isaiah out of that to give them words of hope and words of encouragement. It doesn't seem possible, but a month ago we were celebrating Christmas. And all through Christmas, I found that upon going back to Isaiah and seeing the prophecies that Isaiah had of the coming of the Messiah, the coming of Jesus, were all signs of hope for a nation who literally were at the end of their rope. At the end of their rope. These are words that I find great comfort and strength in the midst of disappointment in my own life, when all else fails. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Put your place in the Israelites who've watched their nation be obliterated and saw their capital and their temple destroyed. Of these words of hope. The thing as I look at Isaiah, as he says, even the young will grow weary and faint, that he knows that it's not just the weak, it's the strong and the young who can run without any trouble, but even the young and those who are strong still face this disappointment. Yet it is God who will bring hope and encouragement. It is God who will lift them up. This week, I had an opportunity to visit with someone in our he was a recovering alcoholic. He'd been through AA and had been sober for a while, but as he was telling me his story, well, I'll tell you honestly, I was surprised because this man is the most self-centered, egotistical man that I think I've ever met. There's not enough room for all of us and him in this room. But yet he talked about a time of being humbled and realizing that he could not get sober without the strength and encouragement of God. Any of us who think that we can do that by ourselves, any of us think that we can make those changes and deal with life without some kind of faith and encouragement, are only fooling ourselves. Isaiah talks about those who wait for the Lord will have their strength renewed. And the word wait is not in the sense of like we're waiting in line at Disneyland, or if you're waiting in line at the post office here in Cedar Falls, waiting forever to get just one stamp for a postcard. I made $5 again this week. I made $5 again because somebody got tired of waiting and said, here, take $10, mail this for me, and I made $5 off of that. It's my second job. Yes. It's not that kind of waiting. The Bible sometimes interprets it as being patient. Waiting as if it's purposeful. Listening. Opening Scripture and allowing God to speak to us through passages like Isaiah 40. Finding hope in its message and waiting. And then our strength will be renewed. Renewed. Now, the Hebrew form of the word renew is also can be interpreted as exchange. So you renew your your library book, and stuff, but you exchange one for another. And exchange in the sense of the way is that we exchange our fear and our doubt for words of hope and encouragement. We exchange those things in life that bring us down and realize that there is strength in God by waiting patiently to allow God's strength to be renewed in our hearts. This week I had the most amazing, well, actually it was last Saturday. I told some of you, but last Saturday I grilled. It was just beautiful, just like it was yesterday. And so Janet said, let's get something and grill. So I grilled, and then while I was out there grilling in a sweatshirt, and I couldn't believe it was January. So I took a selfie of me in front of the grill and all of that and sent it to my two brothers and my sister. And as I sent it, I said, I told you that, I said, here I am grilling in January in Iowa. It's 50 degrees. Why would anyone want to live anyplace else? And so that just started a round robin of texts and as well as phone calls. And I got a phone call from my brother, one that I had never expected. You see, when Dave and Marlis Powell's and their family was trying to decide a week ago Thursday what to do, doctors had said there's nothing more that we can do, and there was really only one choice, and that was hospice. They asked if I would be with them because sometimes you need someone to give strength, encouragement, but to be there for prayer and support. And so after the decision was made and after the plan was laid out and we began walking out, Marlis had told her daughters, Debbie and Teresa, that I was from Forest City. That's where I graduated from high school. And Debbie and Teresa teach at Forest City right now, and so I had never met them, and so Debbie said to me, I hear you're from Forest City. And I said, yeah, I graduated from there, and I said, I graduated in 1971, and she said, ha, 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 ha. That was way before we went there to start teaching. They were about 10 years younger than I was, and anyway, I said, yeah, I've got one brother that still lives up there. You might know him. I said, his name is Dan Williams. You're Dan Williams' brother? Yeah, Dan Williams is my dirty, rotten little brother. And they said, well, we know Dan very well. Dan comes into the school and reads every week to our kindergartners. He's been doing that for about 7 years. I did not know that. Here I called him a dirty, rotten little brother, and I was blown away. But you see, Dan is the one who was paralyzed for 30 years, and talk about discouragement and disappointment. The first time he went out into public, he had a bowel movement that he had no control of, and he decided that he was never going to go out into public. So basically, for many years, he sat at his home feeling sorry for himself. And so when I heard that he was reading to kindergartners, I thought, wow. So I texting last Saturday, I said, Dana, I just heard very good things about you. I couldn't believe it. And so he called me up and I said, well, and then we got to talking about Debbie and Teresa, and do you know them? And yes. And I said, well, their dad has just been put under hospice, and he's sorry to hear that. And I said, but they told me that you've been reading to kindergartners for 7 years. I said, I can't believe you're doing that. I said, yeah, I've been doing that, and it's probably been the best thing I've ever done. They actually fight over who's going to sit on my lap. He's in a wheelchair. And now they feel comfortable enough to come and sit on his lap, and he says it's the best day of the week for him. I said, what happened? How did that get started? He said, well, you remember when I was in the hospital and I was dying. And what he was telling about is literally he was dying. He called me to tell me that he basically had one foot in the grave. He had an infection that they didn't know what they were going to be able to do with his paralysis. It was harder to deal with because he didn't feel it, and so it had spread. and things had gotten worse. So I took off from here and went up to see him. It was late at night. When I got there, we talked and we cried and we talked and we cried, and I said, it's late. I'm going to go see if I can find a hotel, but take care. And as I'm walking out of the room, I turned and I said, Dan, if you were a member of my church, I would pray for you right now. Is it okay? And so I prayed. I prayed for my brother. I took off the brother thing and prayed for him. He said, when you prayed for me, he said, if my big brother could pray, I could pray too. So after I left, he said he prayed that if God saw him through this thing, he would do anything. Anything. Believe it or not, that was about 7 years ago when he began reading to kindergartners. And he says it's the best thing he does. It's what he looks forward to. It has got him past the discouragement. It has got him past the disappointment, the depression, the sadness, to realize that he has been able to get something out of his life. And in that, he has been rewarded with the best hour of the week in his life. And God, if we wait upon him, will renew our spirits. Renew our spirits. The image that I see in this has been an image of an eagle, of he will lift us up like on eagle's wings, that we will soar. When I was growing up, when early in elementary school, we were learning all about eagles being the symbol of our country and how they were becoming closer and closer to being extinct. They were on the endangered list, and I really grew up believing that I would probably never, ever see an eagle. But things have changed, and one of the things that I am going to miss of Cedar Falls is going out to the Cedar River and watching the eagles soar. Or to ride on the trails. There's a couple places where you can get up and close to eagles' nests, and they are big enough that the three of us could lounge up there on our own. But it's amazing and inspiring for me to see as the eagles soar. It's almost effortlessly as their wings are spread and they use the winds to help carry them and to carry them higher and higher. In the same way, if we wait upon the Lord, he will renew our strength and we will soar like an eagle. He will lift our spirits. He will support us and give us strength in our time of discouragement. He will be there for us. May you soar like an eagle. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you that in life, it is oftentimes the hard times, the tragic days, the days of disappointment that we appreciate the good times. And we appreciate you, that you promise to be there through the thick and the thin, even through the valleys of the shadow of death. Thank you, Lord, that as we wait upon you, that you will renew our strength. Amen.